What up, peeps, and welcome to today's vlog. We really did not have any plans for today. We usually like to use at least one of our days off from the store to just kind of relax and chill. Abby is currently hanging out with her mom, helping her run some errands. And so I was just watching a little bit of YouTube, and I was just thinking about, what am I going to film for today? And I thought, instead of giving you guys a boring daily vlog for today, which is not going to have much substance because we don't have anything planned, we're just going to kind of relax and, watch TV and stuff. I thought instead of doing that, I would just give you guys like a one-shot, one-take video here. However long it ends up being is how long it's going to be. As you can tell by the title of the video, I just wanted to talk about kind of, like a very one video in-depth discussion of how I got into collecting, why I collect, all that kind of stuff. And I've talked about a lot of this stuff before, but usually it's been in the form of like a question and answer type video, or replying to comments, or just like a little part of another video. So I thought it would be very cool and helpful for you guys who are curious about this stuff to just have one video where I lay everything out, explain everything in full detail, especially because we have a lot of new people that are watching the channel as well. We've been very, very fortunate and lucky, and wanted to say thank you to all the new people who have subscribed. I want to say over the past like 2 months, we've gotten like a couple thousand new subscribers, which is really cool, or at least, 1,000 over the past couple months, and that is up a lot from what we normally get. Typically, we were getting like 200 new subscribers every month, but for the past like 60 days or so, we've been at about 600 a month, which is really, really awesome to see. So welcome to all the new people, and thank you guys so much for subscribing. So I'm going to start with kind of how I got into collecting and all that kind of stuff, and it'll also, also be discussing kind of like why I collect and stuff like that. So to start off, I'm filming this September 1st, I think it is. I will be turning 30 on the 19th of this month. So I'm 29, 30 years old. Grew up, born in 1990, grew up in Vancouver, Washington, and I pretty much had I think a fairly average childhood. I know a lot of people who are really into retro video games and stuff. They kind of are into it because it was one thing during their childhood that they were able to enjoy and kind of use to escape from bullies or bad life at home or whatever it is. And I feel very fortunate and lucky to have not had issues like that. Every kid gets bullied, of course. I had my fair share of that, but I wasn't excessively bullied or anything like that. I always had at least a couple good friends throughout elementary, middle, and high school. So I was very lucky in that sense, and video games were never really an escape for me. It was just a fun hobby that I enjoyed. But video games, it was never my number one hobby. It was never my number one priority. I probably wouldn't even say it was top 2 or 3, for most of my childhood. Started playing video games back, as far as I can remember, basically. I remember playing Super Nintendo at my parents' friend's house. I've talked to my parents about this. They do not remember who this is, but I specifically remember going to my parents' friend's house. It was a couple. They had 2 boys. One of them was probably a little bit older than me. One of them was a little bit younger than me. And I must have been 4 or 5 years old. And I remember playing Yoshi's Island on their Super Nintendo. And I remember that very vividly. And, the first console that I'm pretty sure we had was... I think I had a Game Boy. But I think the first home console that I can really, really remember was the PlayStation 1. And playing a lot of games on that. And I feel like we must have had something before that. We must have had a Super Nintendo. We had to have had one. Because I definitely remember playing Donkey Kong Country and Super Mario World and stuff like that. But the PS1 is the first one that I really, really remember. And we had a lot of games for it. My dad would also play video games, which was kind of cool. We could play together and stuff. But I played a lot of Tony Hawk 1 and 2 and probably 3. I played a lot of Gran Turismo. I played Final Fantasy 7. Played all the Tomb Raider games, both medieval games. Watched my dad play Parasite Eve 1 and 2. And I had one of those Pizza Hut demos that had Ape Escape on it. It was just the first level. I'd play that over and over and over. But yeah, we had a lot of fun with the PlayStation 1. And then when the Nintendo 64 came out, it wasn't even something that was really on my radar because, my family grew up fairly poor. We didn't get the newest consoles when they came out or anything like that. I didn't have Nintendo Power Magazine subscriptions. So I don't even think that I really knew about the Nintendo 64. But one day my dad came home from work and he had the Toys R Us bundle of the N64. It was the black console, had a gray controller, but it also had an extra atomic purple controller, and it was all in box and everything. I don't think it was new. I think he got it from a coworker, but it was all there, and he had Pilot Wings and Super Mario 64, which were the 2 launch titles in North America. So it was pretty early on. So we got that. I played Pilot Wings for like 5 minutes, hated it. I put in Super Mario 64, which I knew was going to be the better game anyway. I'm the kind of person that likes to kind of save the best for last type thing, so I played Pilot Wings first because I knew it wasn't going to be as good. Played Mario 64, loved it. It is my number 1 favorite game of all time, still to this day. And so once we got the Nintendo 64, we went to Game Crazy, and we traded in our PlayStation and all the games and used the money to get Nintendo 64 games. It must not have happened right away because... like I said, the Pilot Wings and Mario 64 were the only 2 launch titles. A couple other games came out shortly after, but I remember, at least in the end, having like 10 to 15 games. So, we got other games as time went on, but we ended up getting Ocarina of Time and Super Smash Bros. And Banjo-Kazooie and what else? Tony Hawk, Top Gear Rally, Body Harvest. We had Mace the Dark Age. We had like a pretty good amount of games, a couple sports games here and there. 1080 Snowboarding and Wave Race were 2 big ones that we played a lot. But I would also borrow games from friends. I remember borrowing Pokemon Snap and Yoshi's Story and Mario Party 1. And we would rent games from Blockbuster as well. So, after the Nintendo 64, obviously, was the GameCube. And the first time I played the GameCube was at a friend's house. Him, his mom, and his stepdad were all very into video games, and like they would play video games on their own in separate rooms, on their own TVs, on their own consoles. And I went over there and we played Animal Crossing for the GameCube, and we played it for like 3 days straight, and it was the most fun that I had had with video games up to that point. I had always played multiplayer and stuff, but Animal Crossing was so much fun. It was so enveloping, and there was so much to do. And so after spending that weekend at his house playing that game, I decided I'm going to save up my money. I'm going to buy a GameCube, and I'm going to buy Animal Crossing. So I started saving. And like I said, my family was pretty poor. We didn't really get an allowance. I just kind of, that was the dryer going off. But I just kind of had to, make money however I could. Birthday, Christmas, doing little odd jobs for my family or my neighbors or my grandparents or whatever. Ended up saving up enough money, and I bought the game, but I didn't have the console yet. I knew that was the one game I was going to buy anyway, so I bought that first. It was like $50 for a new copy at that time. Came with the memory card and everything, and I had that game for weeks before I got the console, and I just remember looking at it all the time, reading the manual, just doing everything. Finally, went up to Seattle to visit my grandma and had a little bit of money. She gave me the rest of it, and we went to a GameStop or a Game Crazy or something and got the console, got, I think, an extra controller and another memory card, and we got Wario World, and we might have got Smash Brothers. I'm not completely sure, but I definitely had that game. And I had Luigi's Mansion as well. But we got this stuff, and I started playing everything. And, from there on, I had other consoles and everything, but nothing had as much of an impact as the N64 and the GameCube. So fast forward, middle school, like 6th, 7th grade, I started really, really getting into music, and my dad was a musician. So I had, he started me playing drums when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I did that forever. Started playing guitar when I was like 14. He was a guitar player. Or started playing guitar when I was younger than that, like 11 or 12. But 14, I believe, was when, I was in my first band and we were doing stuff. And I got really, really into music, and I wasn't really paying too much attention to video games. And throughout all this time, I was skateboarding as well. So music was probably my number 1 hobby. Skateboarding was number 2. Video games was maybe number 3. But it wasn't anywhere close to the first 2. So, music was my main thing all throughout middle school and high school. I guess it was before I graduated high school. YouTube started to come around, and I think this was either late 2007, early 2008. I started watching YouTube and came across a couple channels that collected video game stuff, and they would show their collection. They would talk about games, a couple reviews here and there. And the one thing that was most attractive to me about those channels was when they would go to thrift stores and then show you the stuff that they picked up. And that was actually how I found the channels at first, because I've told this story before, but I was cleaning my bedroom, and underneath my bed, I don't know where it came from, but I found a Sega Genesis Model 2. I don't think I had controllers or cables. I don't think I had any games, but I found that Sega Genesis, and I was like, I wonder if I can sell this. And so I posted it up on Craigslist, and someone came and picked it up, and I made some money. And I was like, that was kind of cool. And I don't know how I kind of like made the jump from that to actually going to Goodwill and buying video games to sell, but that's what I did shortly after. And there was a like pawn shop, game store type thing in Portland, and they were buying video games off of Craigslist, but they would actually drive to your house and pick stuff up. You didn't have to go to the store if you couldn't make it. So me, being in high school, I didn't have a car or anything. I was riding my bike or riding the bus to get around. So they would send someone to my house to pick up stuff, and I would sell them basically every single thing that I bought. So I would go to Goodwill and I would buy basically whatever video games I found. It almost didn't matter what it was, as long as it wasn't like, crappy PS1 sports titles or whatever. But I was buying Atari games, NES, Super Nintendo, 64, anything. And back then you could find that stuff at pretty much any Goodwill you went to, and it was really, really cheap. So I was buying video games from thrift stores and then selling them all directly to this one place. And after doing that for a couple months, I came across something. I don't even remember what it was, but I found something that I used to play, used to own. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to sell this one. I want to keep it so I can play it. And that's what started me on collecting. Because I was watching these videos of these YouTubers who were collecting and showing their stuff. Because, at least from the videos I was watching back then, most of the people that were going to Goodwill and buying video games were not selling them. They were just putting them in their collection and keeping them. And I was selling them, and it was my only way to make money. I did not have a job until I was 17. So it wasn't even a real job, but, I didn't have any way to make money. So this was my way to do that. And then once I got that one item, it was probably like Mario 64 or something. But once I got that one item that triggered that memory of being like, I used to love this game and play it all the time. I don't want to sell it. That's when I started collecting. And I collected for quite some time. I started making YouTube videos shortly after that, borrowing the camera from my neighbor like every week to film videos. It was really, really crazy. So I didn't want to borrow their camera anymore. And I had enough of a collection where I would be able to sell some of that stuff to buy a camera, which was the whole purpose of, selling the collection, was to get a camera to make more videos and not have to borrow my neighbor's camera. So what I did is I sold most of my collection. I kept all the complete in box stuff, and I sold the rest of it, and I used it to buy a pre-owned MacBook, which had the built-in camera for like iMovie or whatever it was. and I used that to make my videos. And as soon as I got that MacBook, I started collecting again. But I had kept all my complete in box games, and I decided at that point, if I'm going to collect, I'm going to go complete in box only. Because, and this is 2008, that I was 2008 or 2009, I think, that I was doing this, maybe 2010. But I decided way back then to only go complete in box, which I still do now. So from that point, once I got that MacBook, I started my collection again, only doing complete in box. It made it a lot easier to build a collection that way because most of the stuff that I was finding was not complete in box. So I was selling a lot more, not keeping as much, which then gave me more money to buy stuff for the collection. So it was just kind of a cycle that fed into itself. And starting out like that, you can probably see how it led to me owning Double Jump video games and basically doing the same thing now. So did that for a while. And I was going to community college here in Vancouver and didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had multiple career lines picked out that I was kind of interested in, but never really felt 100% like this is what I want to do. I considered being like a funeral director or a mortician. That was probably like one of the first ones that I was like, yeah, I could do this. Then I thought, it would really be cool to be like a lawyer or a judge. I took one criminal justice class at community college, decided it's not really for me. And I didn't really have, many options beyond that of things that I was considering. So, my really good friend Cassidy, who's been in lots of videos before, he wanted to go into recording arts. And so he was looking at a school in Florida called Full Sail University. And at this time, when he was looking for that, I had kind of decided I wanted to be like a graphic designer, 3D artist, game designer, something along those lines. And I started going to ITT Tech in Portland, Oregon, which is no longer there. I would not recommend going to ITT Tech or any school like that. I was going for about 3 months before I realized this school is really, really crappy. I'm paying money to go to this school where I'm not getting a great education. It wasn't really like I wanted to do like game design, and the closest that they had to that was like some weird like hybrid graphic arts 3D design kind of degree, which wasn't really what I wanted to be doing. So 3 months in, I decided this school is crap. I don't want to go here anymore. I'm wasting my money. So I stopped going, and I told my parents I wanted to go to Full Sail with Cassidy in Florida because Full Sail is one of the top schools for game design and game art and stuff like that. So Cassidy started a couple months before me, moved down to Florida, got an apartment, and then after a few months, I moved down as well, and that's when I moved to Florida. I was 21, so that was 2011, end of September 2011, then I moved to Florida, and I shipped my entire collection down at that time. It was like 11 large USPS flat rate boxes. So it cost me, at that time, I think a large flat rate box was like $12 or whatever. So it cost me, a little bit of money to get my collection down there. There were some things that were too big to ship. I had to leave at my parents' house, box Guitar Hero controllers and my big Gex cutout that I still have, luckily. But I had to leave some stuff behind. And so I shipped everything that I could. And that's when I really, really started collecting, because before that point, I was basically only going to thrift stores. And I didn't have a car, and as far as I knew, there weren't really a lot of game stores around. There was Legendary Games here in Vancouver, which is still around, and I would go there a lot, but that was the only game store that I would go to. There was one other store in Vancouver. We actually bought them out when they closed a couple of years, a year and a half or whatever ago. But their prices are really, really high, and I never went there. So it was just Legendary Games and thrift stores, and that's pretty much all I did. I went to the outlet a lot. But once I moved to Florida, there's pawn shops everywhere, and there was a pawn shop on my school's campus. Full Sail University owns a lot of property right around the school. So there's a Chick-fil-A on the campus, there's a Firehouse Subs, there's a Wingstop, there's the Cash America Pawn Shop, there's a bunch of other places, there's like a Taco Bell and everything. I think there's even a Winco on their property. They own like a few blocks of property there. So the pawn shop that was there, the Cash America, the very first time that I went there, out on the shelf, it wasn't even something that they pulled out of the back, just out on the shelf, I found 3 different Zelda games for the GameCube, and they were $1 a piece. And I was like, holy crap, this is better than the thrift stores in Vancouver. This is crazy. And I started a relationship with the workers and the manager of that place, and I would go there almost every single day after class, and I would buy stuff. And I was getting so much stuff because I made a deal. I made a deal with them that any not current gen stuff, so any PS2, PS1, GameCube, original Xbox, anything like that, it was $1 a piece for me, which was awesome. And they eventually started raising the prices, but they let me still get deals. Eventually I started paying $2 a piece or something like that, but when they were selling stuff for $5 or $10. So they would pull stuff out of the back for me, and I would get stuff all the time. It was crazy, and it was awesome. And that really kick-started my collection because, like I said, when I moved, I had been collecting for a couple years at that point, and I only had 11 large flat rate boxes. By the time I graduated high school, I had the entire living room and dining room completely full of video game stuff. I had kiosks, I had signs, I had complete Nintendo 64 set. I had thousands and thousands of games. I had a collection, probably almost as big as the one that I have now. And I did that all throughout college. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in game art, and I graduated February of 2014, and by August of 2014, I had a job offer at Apple in San Jose, California. And I was living with my girlfriend at the time in Orlando, and we were not getting along. I grew to despise her, basically. No bad blood now. We don't talk or anything, but I don't actively hate her at this point. I just don't care. I wish that that my time in Florida had been a little bit better. We'll just say that. But I got a job offer at Apple. It was a contract position for like 6 months. And basically they were like, you have to be here by Friday. And it was like Monday. And I was like, I can't. There's no possible way. Can I have like till next Friday? So it was like, give me 2 weeks instead of 1 week. And they agreed to do that. So I had to sell my collection really fast or figure something else out. Now, this is like the biggest regret that I have of collecting. I only kept a couple things from my collection. I kept my factory sealed Watermelon N64 controller, which I'm really happy I did, because I think even now there's less than 10 like known to exist that are still sealed. So I kept that, and then I kept my Wii U and a bunch of Wii U games because that's what I was actively playing at the time. And then I had a custom painted N64 console and controller that someone sent me from YouTube that had like, the SicCooper logo and stuff on it. So I kept that because that was very, very special to me. I still have that. I still have the Watermelon controller as well, but I kept that stuff and broke up with my girlfriend, ended up selling a lot of stuff on Nintendo Age, just like smaller bundles and lots and individual stuff here and there. And then eventually just sold the rest of everything to one person, got my plane tickets back to Portland actually, to be here in Vancouver. I bought a car in Vancouver on, what was it? I think it was on Wednesday or Thursday. I bought my car. Friday, my mom and myself drove from Vancouver all the way down to San Jose, California. It was like 14-hour drive, and got to the house where I was renting a room from this family. Met them for the first time after only talking on the phone a couple times. Met them. It was a Filipino family. They were super, super awesome, super nice. Made amazing food all the time and gave me some. But I had like a little cot, like an army cot thing almost. My mom slept on that. I slept on the floor with a sleeping bag. And the very next morning, drove my mom to the airport. She flew home, and I now lived in San Jose. It was weird. It was crazy. I that was the only time in my life that I've only moved to a different area a couple times. I grew up in Vancouver, lived in the same house my entire life till I moved to Florida. When I was in Florida, I moved once from one apartment to the other, and it was like 2 blocks away. Then I moved to San Jose. I knew almost nobody there except for the one guy who used to be my neighbor in Orlando at my second apartment complex. He's the one that actually got me the interview and got me the job at Apple. So I knew him, but he wasn't a close friend. Very, very nice guy, but we were more acquaintances than friends, I would say. So I was in San Jose by myself. Didn't have my collection, had a few things, like I said, and I worked at Apple. And I worked there for that 6 months for the contract position. I was working on the 3D portion of Apple Maps, which I don't think people really even use that much. And, it didn't make Apple any money at all. So they actually, they didn't renew my contract, but they also ended up closing like that whole thing and moved a lot of people to work in other parts. But after that was over, I stayed in San Jose for like 2 weeks. That was it. And then I moved back to Vancouver, moved in with my parents again, and I was like applying for jobs and everything in the game industry, but nothing was really panning out, and I had to do something. So I started buying and selling again. And it was at that point where I started to sell on Amazon. Once I got back to Vancouver, started to sell on Amazon and eBay. And I was doing that for, I don't know, I want to say like 4 or 5 months before I started collecting again. And right before I started collecting, I met Abby. And she had just moved to Oregon. And, Washington's right by Oregon. I'm like 5 minutes from Portland right now. And she had posted up on Craigslist. She was selling some N64 games, and I was buying and selling at that time again. So I contacted her and I was like, hey, I don't know if she had prices or what, but we were texting and I was just like, hey, I'm interested in these games. How much do you want? Blah, blah, blah. And we ended up not being able to work out a deal. She wanted too much for whatever it was. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Whatever. And then randomly, I don't even know why, but I had Snapchat on my phone. I've never used Snapchat, but I had it, and I got a Snapchat from Abby, which was a number that I didn't recognize, and it was just a picture of her. And, it was like one of those things where she took a selfie and sent it to everyone. And so I saw it, and I was like, do I know you? And she's like, I don't know. I don't think so. And so we just started talking like that, and that's how I met Abby. So video games brought me Abby, which is cool. But shortly after that, I started collecting again. And then shortly after that, Abby and I started renting a house together, and everything from there leads to now. So that's kind of like how I got into collecting. That's, my whole journey basically from elementary school until now. We started working on planning to open up the game store while we were living in that first house we were renting, which was in Kelso, Washington, which, if you're moving to this area, do not move to Kelso or Longview. That is crackhead central up there. John Hancock lives up there. Very, very nice guy. I'm sure his house is in a fine neighborhood. But for the most part, Kelso and Longview are not great areas. So really glad we don't live there anymore. But while we were living there is when we started planning to open up the store. I was going to be opening it with my friend Kevin. We were going to be 50-50 partners. I just ended up having more drive and passion to do it sooner than later than he did, and I ended up buying him out of his portion of all the inventory we had acquired up till that point. And obviously you guys know the rest of that story. I opened up the store with Abby's help, but I opened up the store by myself without Kevin. So it's just, Abby and me. And we've been running the store ever since, and our collection has continued to grow. And that's pretty much where we are now. So yeah, that is kind of how I got into everything, but it doesn't really explain why. And I honestly can't really tell you why. I can tell you that I've always enjoyed collecting, even before I got into video games. I collected Pokemon cards. I collected Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I collected coins, and I collected rocks, and I collected all sorts of stuff like when I was a kid. And whenever we would play video games where you can collect stuff like in Banjo-Kazooie, even when I was a little kid, my goal was always to collect 100% of everything. I had to get every coin in every level on Super Mario 64. I had to get every star in that game. I loved collecting. And that, I think, is just the biggest part of it. I love playing video games. But, you know, if you guys watch the videos, you know that I don't play all the time. Abby plays more video games than I do, which I think is awesome, by the way. But, you know, I'm not ashamed to admit that I do not play as much as I could or should. And, you know, I enjoy collecting, and I enjoy it for my own reasons. You know, I just enjoy collecting. That's just part of my personality, is that I enjoy collecting. Whether it's collecting items in a video game or it's collecting video games in real life, I enjoy it either way. So I think that that's pretty much just the main reason why. And I've said before, if I didn't collect video games, I'd be collecting something else. I know that I would. So for me, collecting video games is the coolest thing that you can collect because it is functional. And people always say, video games are meant to be played. Video games are meant to be played. Why would you keep a game sealed? Why would you buy a game you're not going to play? Blah, blah, blah. I understand that, and I appreciate that, and that's why I enjoy collecting video games, because you can play them. You know, I have a small coin collection, but all it does is sit in a box. I don't do anything with that collection. I don't spend the coins, even though that's what they were made for. I don't spend the coins, I collect them. I might look at them sometimes, but that's about it. People who collect stamps, they don't send letters with those stamps, they just collect them. So video games are meant to be played, yes, but there can be more to it than that. If video games were just meant to be played, then physical copies wouldn't mean anything. If you could digitally download a game and play it, and playing it is all that mattered, you wouldn't need a physical copy. You wouldn't need the original box. You wouldn't need a manual. You wouldn't need, you know, action figures from the game that you don't play with. You know, you wouldn't need collector's editions. You wouldn't need all this stuff. And to me, retro video games is more than just playing the games. If you want to just play the games, you can emulate them. That's whatever you want to do. I don't care. But that's not for me. I collect because I enjoy it. I love it. It's the reason that every aspect of my life is related somehow to video games. You know, my entire YouTube channel, I've said a few times, it's not all about video games, and that is true. It's just about what I do every day. But what I happen to do every day just happens to be related to video games, so you end up seeing a lot of that. And, you know, we obviously have the store. It's our business. That is how we make a living, in addition to YouTube and, you know, eBay and Amazon and stuff. But it's the primary source of income for us. It supports our life. It allows us to have this collection, and we don't take that for granted. We are very, very appreciative of that, and it's a lot of hard work, and I just love collecting. It's just what I like to do. It's my hobby. We don't spend money on other hobbies, you know? A lot of other people will spend money traveling, or they'll go to the bar and they'll go drinking, and they'll go to sporting events, and they'll spend money on jerseys and just different stuff. We don't do that. So, you know, we don't have kids at the moment either. We don't have kids yet. So we have the time and we have the money, luckily, to be able to collect retro video games, and it makes us happy. And that's the most important thing. If people are getting on you about your collection for whatever reason, whether you don't play the games, whether you only collect sealed games, or it takes up a bedroom in your house, or just whatever it is, for whatever reason, people are getting on you, just, if it makes you happy, that's all that matters. If you're not hurting anyone else, if you're not damaging anyone else's property, or you're not being rude to people, you're not ripping people off, if you're collecting and it makes you happy and it doesn't affect anyone else, then nothing those people say should matter to you, because it doesn't to me. People comment all the time about how you don't even play your collection, blah, blah, blah. Oh, why do you have sealed games? That's so stupid. I don't care what those people have to say, because I enjoy collecting. Abby enjoys collecting. We enjoy doing it together. And I know there's plenty of couples out there who don't have a hobby in common. And yes, Abby and I can play video games together, but even if we're not doing that, we can still collect video games together. It doesn't always have to be one or the other. It can be both. And we enjoy doing it. We have fun together. And that's really all that matters. So that's pretty much all that I've got for you guys today. I hope that this maybe answered some questions you guys might have had, or inspired you to maybe start your own collection, even if it's not video games. If you enjoy, toys or baseball cards or Pokemon cards or movies or whatever it is, skateboards, whatever, Ryan collects those. If you guys have a hobby that you enjoy, don't let other people's mean comments affect it in any way, because honestly, what they say does not matter. If you would not take advice from that person, don't take criticism from them. And especially if you're going to start a YouTube channel, that's probably the number one thing that I can say. And it's one thing to point out errors when you're responding to comments, or to direct someone in the right direction if they have an incorrect assumption about something. That's one thing. But if someone's going to come on and just leave you a rude comment and say something dumb, it shouldn't affect you. And I know, even for me, it's hard to not let it get to me sometimes. But I just think, and I did not make up that quote, but I always think about it. If you wouldn't take advice from someone, don't take criticism from them either. And that's pretty much all you need to know. So that's going to be it for today, guys. I really hope this video was maybe helpful in some way or answered some questions, and I hope that you got something out of it, maybe just a little bit of enjoyment. It's a bit of a longer one, but like I said, we didn't have anything else planned for today, so I wanted to at least do something, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow.